Hello, this is going to be part two of my response to somebody who replied to one of my posts on the platform formerly known as Twitter, almost daring me to explain my glob Earth projection and how it, according to this individual, doesn't work. I'm really starting to get tired of dealing with these people. I'm not going to be making these videos for them anymore. This is going to be for everybody else. And so here is a lowdown of what's been happening. So a few weeks ago, I released a video where my computer had been for over a month. I believe it was 36 days when I made that video of my computer getting an image from this website every 15 minutes. There were the three cameras involved: arrival heights, observation hill, and lodging construction. But in the entire time that I had assembled this time lapse, the sun never went down. It was always daylight. So in other words, it was daylight for 36 days plus of full 24-hour sunlight. First thing I wanted to do to show flat earthers that indeed this is a genuine and accurate representation was to look at some various tools like Stellarium. I went and placed myself at McMurdo station, and if you play around with this, you can see that according to Stellarium, the sun remains above the horizon for a full 24 hours a day. The sun should begin to start setting probably in a week, maybe 10 days or so. And what we would consider proper genuine nighttime, I'd probably put about a month after that. I've got very little confidence that flat earthers put any trust in tools like Stellarium. But there you have it. There's a tool called Stellarium that seems to match the observations in question. In fact, if I go back to when I started, you can clearly see that it follows the time lapse just fine. After that, I was going to talk about the app that I had written. And for a bit of context for my newer subscribers, back in 2019, I had set up two cameras, one pointing south to capture the sun and the moon, and I wanted to capture the analemma. That was the reason why I bought the camera. And the other one pointing north, I had pointed towards Polaris so that I was hoping to be able to, if I could look at the images at, let's say, midnight or at any time during the night, that I could capture the stars rotating throughout the year as we're going around the sun. And then after I had set those cameras up and I was looking for something to do with the images after about a year, I got the idea of trying to build my own app that you could think of as augmented reality. That eventually grew into an unwieldy beast, and then I started to rewrite some code that I then put on GitHub, and that is where my Flat Earth Clock app ended up going, or rather, I should say my multi-projection clock app went.
So the idea was simple at the time. I really don't have enough experience in math or maybe even enough skills to derive all of these formulas myself, or essentially to recreate all of the various equations used to calculate all of the different directions of the sun, the moon, and the stars. So I just went on Google and I started searching, looking for all of the various equations and formulas that have been developed in order to tell me what the direction of those objects were. The first one I found was the formula for the sun. That was easy enough. NOAA, NOAA, that's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I believe. They produced a spreadsheet that calculates the direction of the sun, and I was able to derive all of the different calculations from that, and that is what I used at the very start to calculate the position of the sun. The next thing after that was easy enough to find was calculating the position of all the stars. I got a database of the brightest stars. There were about 650 stars, and the formula to calculate the direction of the stars was probably the easiest of all of them. The moon was a little bit trickier. A lot of the sites that I saw were not very well written, and the calculation example that they gave didn't really work, and after much effort and after looking around quite a bit, I found some code that somebody had written to calculate the direction of the moon, and that's what I ended up using for a long time. I also wanted to calculate the position, and from there the direction of the planets, and that was the toughest of all, and I ended up finding an app that somebody had written in JavaScript, and I ended up porting that over to Java, and that's what I ended up using.
So all of the various formulas that I ended up using were essentially formulas that I had found online that somebody else had written.
Nevertheless, it seemed to be accurate for my location. I then ended up talking to other people from other parts of the world. I was able to get different time-lapse videos that they had made, and with their permission, I then took those videos, and knowing their location and the time that those time-lapse videos were taken, I was then able to use this same program to confirm the accuracy of it. I even made, I believe it was a 3-part video, where I found a time-lapse of a sunset, date unknown, location unknown, and I was able to figure out eventually not only when it was taken, but I was also able to get the geolocation. I believe it was within 3 degrees longitude and a couple of degrees latitude. I forget exactly where it was, but I was pretty close, I thought.
So once again, I have a fairly high confidence that the formulas in question are accurate because they do tend to match the various observations that are put up against them. So here I can choose to not display the camera. This is entirely computed, and I can choose a
time. So here you can see that everything is moving from right to left, and I'm going to have to move the camera up. Right now the camera is pointing at an altitude of 5 degrees. If I point it up a little bit higher, there you can see the sun path, and if I move it around, you can see that at some point the sun is going to go screaming by like that.
So I had images of McMurdo Station, and I wanted to find out what direction the cameras were pointing. And so it was just an easy thing. Once I had the time all synchronized, I could then scroll back and forth until the sun was kind of pointing off in this direction. And then all I'd have to do pretty much at that point was mess around with the azimuth. Maybe something like that, maybe an azimuth of 329. So I would say that this camera, I believe that's observation heights camera, is pointing at an azimuth of about 329 or thereabouts. I did that for all 3 cameras, and I was able to then figure out which direction each of them were pointing. I'll switch over to the other one. But there you can see the sun's glare is coming off the water, and there's probably some camera blooming going on as well. But once again, you can see that it's tracking reasonably close, and I didn't do a perfect job, and I'm not really planning to do it, but the idea was to get a general azimuth direction. And the arrival heights camera, this one here is the arrival heights camera, is pointing at 180 degrees. So this camera should be pointing due south. So once again, I have taken code that I have written several years ago, and without any modification, I took a recent time lapse, and just by giving it the obvious geocoordinate, I was able to figure out the direction that the cameras were pointing. The computer is able to calculate an expected direction of the sun, etc., and it matches the time lapse. So the next thing that I wanted to do after that was I wanted to see if I could figure out where the cameras were located on the map, given that I now have the directions that they're pointing. And so I loaded Google Earth, and with a bit of investigation, I've placed 6 different place marks. I'm going to make these available. Check the description below. You'll be able to grab them off of my Google Drive. So the first camera that I've set up is Arrival Heights. It's got an azimuth of 180, so I just have to point due south. Arrival Heights is over here. In fact, I believe on Google Earth, Arrival Heights Laboratory is, I believe they've misplaced that. I tried the camera in different locations. Wasn't sure if it was over here, if it was over here. And this version of Google Pro, I was able to see this a little bit more clearly. So they might have updated the map just a few days ago, but it certainly would make sense that I believe this is where the Arrival Heights camera is, and it's going to be looking off in this direction over here. So if you look closely, there are 5 of these round-looking structures. I'm not sure exactly what they are. At one point, I thought they might have been fuel tanks. They might be storage sheds, but I'm not sure. All I know is that they're round and they're easy to identify. So there's 5 of them. There's one here. There are 2 that are grouped here, and there are 2 more over here, which certainly correspond to what we see here. 1, these 2, and then these 2 others as well. So if I expect the camera is pointing due south, north is directly behind me. Further away from this one should be this building, and if I look, it looks like it's this building here. There's this other one at a lower level over here, which certainly looks like it's this one over here. Then beyond that, I see two buildings that are kind of looking in this direction. Looks like there are these two buildings over here. Then there's these two green buildings, which certainly look like they could be these two here. Then there's this brownish orangish building over here, which looks like it could be this one over here. This building looks like it's an L shape, which looks like it could be this one right over here. So it certainly looks like I'm looking in the correct direction. And I got that from the direction of the sun, and I got the direction of the sun from formulas that I got online, and those formulas, as I was coding them, clearly indicated a spherical Earth. If I look at the second one, observation hill is over here. I put the pin at what looked like the peak. A much closer examination of this area showed that it looks like there is some sort of building over here. So I put a pin over here. It might be over here, it might be over here, it might be on a pole outside, who knows. But it looks like that is observation hill camera. As for the azimuth, because it's not 180 or 0, it'll be a little bit trickier. If the camera is pointing west like this, north is really over on this side. With an azimuth of 330 degrees, I really have to orient north at about 30 degrees in this direction, something like that. And so now if I come back over to here and I compare against the web camera, here's this circular looking thing over here, which may be this one over here. So it looks like they might have painted it, possibly since this was taken. And so if this is off to the bottom right over here, we've got a round roofed building, which looks like it could be this one. Then we've got a peak roof building kind of thing that looks like that over here. You've got this building that looks like an L, and then there's this other building over here right beside it. Looks like it's this area right here. It looks like these may have been temporary. I don't see them here anymore. That looks like it might be this one. That looks like it might be that one. This looks like it might be this building here. From this one and from this one, you can see in this one, there is activity going on right about here. In this one, there is activity going on right about here. And when you compare that to the construction, you can see that it looks to me like they are putting up a new building right about here. So if this is where this new building is, it looks like the camera is probably around here somewhere, probably in this corner looking off in this direction. So that's basically going to be what I was planning to show in this video. I think what I might do in the next one is go over the different formulas that I found that point to the direction of the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets. I'll probably just focus on the sun. There are two formulas that I found. One of them is from the generic set of formulas that calculate the sun, the moon, and the planets. And the other one that I took from the NOAA spreadsheet calculator. If anybody's interested, let me know. I'll go through all the different steps of each. It might get a little bit boring, but you will clearly see that the math is not at all complicated. I believe apart from standard addition, subtraction, multiplication, that kind of stuff, the only other thing that is needed is an understanding of trigonometry. So it's using sines and cosines. There are several constants involved, but that's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, you basically know what to do. And with that, I'm going to see you again in the next one. Bye for now.